Um, hello, my name is Natalie Vartanian. I am the Community Engagement Manager here at CORE, and I wanted to come on today and talk about something that I think really plagues us all. And I know for me, it definitely is something that I have, struggled with like my whole life, and that is one of perfectionism. And, you know, the thing is, like, perfectionism does in a lot of ways come from a good place in that we want to do well. We have high ethics and values and a desire to do good in the world and make a difference and, be a great sibling, a great employee, a great partner. But it gets twisted in the process, instead of being a great motivator, it ends up being a driver, like a dictatorship, And so we have this now like internal dictator that is telling us what to do, that may not actually have the result that we want because what happens is we live in a constant state of never being enough. We don't feel worthy, we don't feel connected, or that we're enough. Um, and then we end up being that same kind of tyrant that we are inside of ourselves. We start doing it to other people, whether we want to or not, whether we realize it or not, and it's because we hold ourselves to these standards that are just like unmeetable. Just even thinking about it, like I kind of like feel this weight on my chest of just like the pressure that comes from that perfectionism, and then and there's all these like reasons why it's a good thing. We're kind of rationalizing away that driving force, and um but all it ends up doing is criticizing. It's like the critic is how I think of it. It's the perfectionism kind of activates this critic in us that's like on us, 24/7. And the thing is, again, it might come from a really healthy place, but the expression of it, is that of at core, we like to think of it in terms of the framework by Franz Rupert of the three selves. There's that healthy self in us that has the ability and the resources and the creativity and the kind of objectivity of a situation, but then because we are hurt at a certain point and a wounded part of us comes out, then to protect us, the survivor part comes out. And this one has all the tactics and the strategies and the defenses. And so perfectionism is one of those strategies. Um, and what it does is it has us be like really, really hard on ourselves, like every day. Everything we create kind of gets put through this filter of, is this good enough? We're scrutinizing it just, relentlessly. And like I said, it impacts because then the people in our lives are constantly in kind of fear or intimidation. They don't like fully feel us or understand where we're coming from, because what they're seeing and what they're seeing is our obsession with the perfection. They're seeing our strategies and they're interacting with that part. And of course it doesn't feel like us because it isn't. Perfectionism isn't us, but like we relate with it so much that we feel like it's hard to kind of separate the two. Um, but yeah, what it does is it squashes our creativity, because when we're in that state of like gripping and holding and stressed out and worried and scared, and and we're trying to like figure it out, we're trying to do a good job, and we just end up kind of suffocating ourselves, suffocating the possibilities for improvement or to have success or to innovate or to in the words of Einstein, you can't doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result is the definition of insanity. And so when we get locked up in that like perfectionist place, we're just operating from the same fear that we always do, right? The same way that we would approach a thing as we always do. it doesn't open up for a space of creativity and resourcefulness and wholeness. It's like something's broken, most likely me, and I need to do something to fix it, or the situation. And so, yeah, it sabotages the actual goal. That's the thing. It's like we think it's the answer and we think it's the path to get to um, a prosperity or a success or freedom, whatever, but it actually does the very opposite thing. That's the crazy part. It sabotages, and so our intentions are great, but we end up being frustrated and annoyed and stressed out and angry most of the time and just like on edge, and nobody wants to be around that. Like I know I don't want to be around it sometimes. Like I can even feel that part where I don't even want to be around my perfectionism. So yeah, it stifles our connection with other people and it stifles our own sense of like creativity and expression. We're like censoring, we're controlling, we're navigating this from a very restricted and constricted place, which usually is an indicator that you're in your survivor strategies. Like it always feels in some way like constricted, where when you're in that kind of healthy, trusting, creative self, it's spacious, it's open, you can breathe. And so, and here's the thing, if we don't address it, like the thing that's at stake is that it's only going to get worse. Like this is when we have anxiety attacks. Like just think about what's happening in the world right now. It's so intense, right? And because it's intense, because we don't know how to deal with it, we're kind of doubling down on the control, and we're doubling down on the the analysis paralysis, and we're doubling down on trying to fix it when you can't fix it. And you feeling stressed out and anxious and having the perfectionist, the critic have a grip definitely isn't going to fix it. And so, we have to address it. We have to address like kind of how to get past the perfectionist, past the critic, and back to that inner resourceful, creative part of us that actually does know, but it's like so quiet and in the corner that like no one can hear it. So, but we have to address, right, what is underneath, because usually it's fear. Usually the perfectionist comes in because there's a feeling underneath it, maybe a wound that hasn't been addressed, right? And so, um, or something that was painful or is hard or challenging, and we're not being with the feelings, and so we're acting out with the perfectionism. And and the thing is, like the things we think would work don't. Like just talking positively, like Natalie, you could do it, but you can't drown out a critic. You can't drown, because that critic's voice is so well honed. We've spent a lot of times being really critical with ourselves, that voice is very loud and dominant. Like usually when that voice comes in, don't you just like automatically listen? Like whatever else is happening, you just are like, oh, the critic's talking. I must listen very intently because everything it's telling me is correct. But and meditating more or exercising more, or because a lot of ways like those are distractions. They numb us out. Whether it's like a glass of wine or whatever it is, like you're we're ignoring it. We're ignoring how we're actually feeling. That's triggering the perfectionism and the control and the that feeling of hopelessness in a way. So it's we can become aware of it, and that's not the answer either. That's the first step in, to be aware, like, oh, this is coming up. Oh, I'm more locked down than I usually am. I'm more stressed out. I'm more anxious. I'm more heightened in my responses. And so, what do you do when you have the awareness? And so, I wanted to share the solution with you all and what's really helped, both in what we've seen at our work, at our workshops over the last 20 years. In my own coaching practice, I've been coaching for 10 years now. I also facilitate at Core. And what we see is that, well, one, you can't do this alone. You can't, because again, that perfectionism thinks I have to do this all by myself. I'm the only one that has the answers. I'm the only one that knows. No one else can help me. No one else is qualified, right? No one else is good enough. I'm not good enough, and no one else is good enough. And so, doing this in a loving, supporting group where you're able to turn inward to see what's actually happening that I'm avoiding, and that takes courage. So courage is that first, really needed asset, um, to look, to be willing to look, to actually look at what the perfectionism is hiding, is covering. And then it's empathy, to have empathy for what we're feeling, right? For what's happening, for what's going on. It's like, y'all, we are in the middle of one of the most crazy times on the planet. It is just, there's not one person that isn't being impacted by what is happening in the world right now. Empathy, like, we are all doing our best. You included are doing your very best. And so to have empathy for that, um, and that takes cultivation, and an actual effort to cultivate the muscle of empathy, because we don't have it. And again, the critic is not, like, zero empathy, um, and then slowing down enough to put our attention to the actual routines and patterns that are going to have us shift into compassion. And that's the mindfulness to do that, so it's the courage to look, the courage to have others do it with us, the courage not to do it alone, contrary to the critic's popular belief. Then empathy, the empathy to be with what's happening, to be with what you're feeling, to not push through it, to not force yourself to be where you're not, to force yourself to fix something when really it's usually a feelings issue and not a fixing issue. And then mindfulness to slow down, to pay attention, to see what's happening, to course correct in the moment over and over and over again, because it's a process, course correcting over and over and over. And these are the three ingredients for compassion: courage, empathy, and mindfulness. And those things are the exact things we're offering at Core through our Braveheart. And that's why we're offering our Braveheart program, because it's 8 weeks to cultivate it. Again, we've spent a long time being in our critic, a long time in our strategies. And so 8 weeks is actually a very short time to have such a significant shift in the way we act with ourselves, and we act with the world, we act with the people we work with, we act with our clients or our customers, our kids, our siblings. It is like the thing that will change everything. And it's probably the most challenging thing to cultivate. And that's why having a group space, 2 hours a week, it's a small time investment for how much your whole day, week, month is going to shift in the quality of a more open hearted, of a more loving, of a more gracious and patient person that you're going to be able to become with yourself and with other people. So the invitation is to practice those things: courage, empathy, and mindfulness. Definitely practice it and get support. That's why we created the Brave Heart. So we want to offer you an invitation to take a step to join us next week. It's 2 hours a week, 5 to 7 p.m. Pacific time on Wednesdays. and you get to be led by a master facilitator, or one of our co-founders, Britta Eski, and she'll have some guest facilitators jumping in, just to keep things fun and exciting. And you'll have daily meditations to choose from, a wealth of resources, and a community and a buddy, someone to do it with, so you don't have to do it alone. Um, so you can go to our website, coreexperience.com, to find out more. I'll post a link in the comments in the video. And please feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions, Natalie at coreexperience.com. I'd love to help answer any and all questions. Have an amazing day. And remember, again, to just be gentle with yourselves. There's so much happening in the world, and we could all use more empathy and courage and mindfulness and compassion. All right. Until next time.